Hey guys, this is Production Music Live. My name is Francois, and today we are going to take a look at a couple of tips and tricks to make our arrangements more interesting, especially for club music like techno and house. And the first one is fairly basic, but a very important one. So what you want to do to improve your club music arrangements, take an existing great track and use it as a reference, and then analyze the arrangement structure of that track. Load it into your project file, just like I did right here with this track, and then listen closely and then set markers. So for example, here I set intro because this is where this track starts basically just playing the kick and maybe a shaker. So this is what I did with my track down here as well. That's where a DJ could mix into this track. And then I took some notes here with the second locator, and they introduced the bass line and percussions here. So I'm starting to do the same thing right here. And then I'm going through the entire track and trying to set my markers and locators right here. So I have the general overall structure of a successful house or techno track, and I can use it as a grid, as a guideline for my own track, and then get creative within these parts. Then when I'm getting more confident over time, I can stop doing this and, just use my own experience to structure my tracks like this. So using a reference track to structure or set a grid over your own track would be tip number one. Now, the next technique is using low cuts and fade to grays. And in dark techno or techno music, for example, it can happen that you're basically playing 8 bars or more or less a variation of the same 8 bars throughout an entire track. And in order to keep it interesting, you have to sort of get creative with your effects. And number one would be here, for example, in this break part. On the master, I'm using a fade to gray effect. A fade to gray is a combination of a simple delay, an auto filter, and sort of a large stage reverb. And we're sort of opening all of them up over time. And right before the drop, we are closing everything down again. So. So with these types of effects, you're sort of building up tension, and then also you're introducing release when you're getting back down. If I do this right in this drop part here. So using low cuts here with the filter and fade to gray effects, maybe in combination even, will help you maintain tension and release over time, even if you're just working with very repetitive 8-bar loops. And a variation of this would be not doing this on the master, but only on parts of your track. For example, on your percussion elements from time to time. For example, if I'm playing this part here, I can open up a fade to gray just on this group. And in this case, this one fader here controls all these 3 effects we just talked about on the master channel: the simple delay, the auto filter, and the large stage reverb. One knob, assigned to the simple delay, to the filter and the resonance, and also to the dry wet of the reverb and to this gain knob here in this utility. Because sometimes it's getting too loud, and that actually would be another technique. For example, if you're using fade to grays and you're building up tension in your break, And then in your drop, you notice, well, actually now my drop sounds a bit quiet compared to everything else. What you can do is put a utility, for example, on your master, and then just slightly bring the gain down right before the drop. So you would draw in something like, just slightly, something like 3 decibels or something. If it gets louder and louder here, you just bring it down overall so your drop can still hit hard when it arrives and when it's dry again. So fade to grays on master, fade to grays and low cuts, and maybe also just opening up reverbs on parts or groups of your tracks will keep your 8-bar loops quite interesting with tension and release over time. By the way, feel free to check out our website, productionmusiclive.com. We actually have a full course on track arrangement there. And also we have full start to finish courses for making a track like this one here, for example, in the style of Amelie. And also you can pick up these Ableton templates or our full techno bundle as well. Check the links in the description. And another arrangement technique for these 4 or 8 bar loop tracks would be getting creative with what you already have and using audio effects on top of that. So we have this clap sound here, but we're using it differently than we would usually. So for example, I have a clap sitting here, but it's playing the kick pattern. And you can also hear it doesn't really sound like a clap. So what are we doing? We're fading it in very late. And then a lot of delay on top and some frequency shifter and reverb. If I play it without all these effects, would be just another clap. But by introducing this simple delay here with the feedback up all the way and very short delay times, I'm sort of creating a new effect. And then by removing the initial transient here and just softening the start of the sample, it's also getting more interesting. And then we are getting this riser effect by using the frequency shifter and automating the frequency. And already we have another 8 bars feeling a lot more interesting compared to just playing, the usual 8-bar loop. Also, you can do this with different rhythmical patterns. For example, and just play rhythmical patterns along from time to time that are somewhat different from what you were already playing. And maybe such different rhythmical patterns will help you also to get through your break parts without losing too much energy. Okay, so playing around with typical elements of a track in a different position and adding creative audio effects, and also playing around with different rhythmical patterns here, and then, sort of filtering them up and down from time to time will keep your track more interesting. And another tip is keep your automations moving. So for example, if you have a main synth like this one, and it's kind of repetitive over the course of your track. So what you should do is make sure to keep your filter cutoff, resonance, and also decay times moving. Let's listen to this synth. So of course, it's always playing sort of the same pattern, but we're keeping it a lot more interesting by keeping it moving and by sort of lengthening the note through automating this decay here, and also by bringing it back down at the beginning of the drop. And we're doing a lot of this over time in the track. We have another drop right here in the back, and then we're sort of fading it out over time. It's a little bit of extra work, but it will keep your track a lot more interesting. Okay, in this track you can also see we're working with low cuts in our break parts to emphasize on our drop. But another thing that's interesting here is the use of effects and Atmos in the background that are playing all over the track, but somewhat keep the feeling interesting when you have those parts where less elements are playing. So we have a lot of hi-hats and percussion elements here, but then we have a part where we don't really play them. And that's when these effects and sweeps and stuff come into play. So that's always handy and useful. Could be perceived as quite empty. So if you have sort of, percussive elements, just faux filters on them, EQs, and a little bit of reverb, and get something like this. And also noises. You can also use your synthesizers to come up with stuff like that. With reverb, erosion, and usually the noise module of your synthesizer, like bright noise right here. So add in Atmos and effects for your background to keep those more quiet parts more interesting in your tracks. Okay, and there we have another nice trick to keep it interesting. First of all, we were playing this drop over here in the usual position, opening up some of the kicks and bass right before the drop. And then a couple of bars later, 16 bars later, we are playing sort of the same drop, just introducing this one more higher plick element here, but we are playing the delayed drop. So basically kick and bass elements are delayed by one beat compared to like the instruments already getting started. And if you have like combinations of these strong drops here and then a couple of delayed drops, maybe one or two in your arrangement, if it fits the style of your production, it will be perceived much more interesting. So another technique to make your track more interesting, more or less using existing elements you already have, is resampling parts of the track. So first of all, we are going to create a new audio track, right-click, insert new audio track. And this is what we're going to use to record something. And I am going to set it on in. And then I'm going to set it to resampling, and I'm going to arm it right here. But for now, I'm not going to activate it. First of all, I want to set up what we're going to do. Pick up a bunch of instruments you're playing in your track, or elements, could be something percussive as well. Okay, and now I want to throw one or two effects onto this group here and sort of filter and delay them and then record the result. So I'm putting the filter to something like 500 to cut low frequencies and simple delay behind. And now I want to automate feedback. So I make this a bit more visible here. And also I want to automate the dry wet. And we want to do it right here. There's already some delay going on here, but let's draw in some more stuff right here. So feedback up to, I don't know, something like 27 here, and then pretty much up all the way afterwards. So pretty high value afterwards. So it of feedback. So it never really stops. And dry wet, first of all, remains down and then goes up. So sort of goes up in the end. Well, let's keep it open a little bit already here. Something like 20. And then open it up further and further, and then pretty much opened up. Something like this. Well, maybe even more. So not 87. Okay, that's feedback. Sorry, I wanted to use dry wet actually. So okay, let's listen back. Yeah, that's what we're going to use. Going back to our audio track down here, we are quickly recording what we are playing up here through resampling. So keep going, take all this tail here, actually switching this quickly off so it doesn't pick up on these new notes here. Okay, this should be enough. And creating a quick new audio track below, and I'm just pulling this down, and I don't need this one for now, so I can actually get rid of it. And also I can undo what I did here on this track, because we want to play it just as we played it before, and also going to undo this automation. Now, everything is as it was in the beginning. We only have one added element, which is this one here. And we can start playing it after the drop, for example, just taking it down a little. That was a bit too loud. Bring it down a bit more. And now you have this new nice element here, which wins you a lot of time to make your track longer. For example, if you pick up quickly a sidechain compressor and throw it onto this one. And you can use creative effects on that one as well. For example, a frequency shifter again. stuff like that. Or what you could also do is, take parts and reverse it. For example, towards reverse, towards the drop. Maybe you have to make sure it sits nicely on a beat that actually makes sense. Maybe it sounds a bit nicer if it's on the third position. These are always things to play around with. Maybe it would sound nice one further up. Just another trick to make your track or arrangement more interesting with resampling parts of your track. If you want to learn more about arrangement, we have a full course on the subject on our website productionmusiclive.com. We also have courses on making tracks like this one from start to finish only using Ableton and usually one more third-party plugin. Also, we have a number of complete Ableton templates for tracks like this one for you to pick up and dissect and learn from. So feel free to visit us on productionmusiclive.com.